And I also just want to re-emphasise again and make one thing very, very clear, that the Metropolitan Police have had a look at anything that they would have been deemed to have considered criminal behaviour. They have decided that nothing criminal has taken place, and it is now over to the BBC to launch an internal investigation.
I think the big question, too, is what impact will this have on the media coverage? Will The Sun back off? Will people on social media back off? Will the media die down? Clearly, Huw Edwards' wife hopes so with this statement. OK. But we shall see.
Well, just before we go back to the panel, we're going to bring in now former Ofcom Chief Media Advisor Martin Campbell. Martin, thank you very much. It does very much go from one minefield to another, I must admit, when it comes to the reporting on all of this latest ongoing issues. Just give me, with your former Ofcom Chief Media Advisor cap on, just give me your take on what we know so far, a series of breaking news events in relation to Huw Edwards.
Well, I mean, from what we now know to be the case, and we can put an awful lot of the awful speculation aside, but the fact of the matter is that what this appears to show is there will still be arguments about whether anything criminal has happened and whether someone was 17 and so on. But the fact of the matter is, if you cut through this, the one thing that is certain for sure is just how inept the BBC still is in handling anything like this at all. I mean, the delay in them doing anything sensible has clearly made it 10 times worse for them. And I think, Patrick, what it does is also is highlight the ridiculous position that overpaid talent has actually got now at the BBC. It appears to be untouchable, but if you start paying people, pay a newsreader £500,000 a year, and you pay a sports commentator, £1.33 million, and then you get the CEO saying he's the best sports commentator in the world, then it's gone mad. The tail's wagging the dog, and I think that to have talent that appear to be more influential than the management is what has happened at the BBC, which is why the whole structure needs to be looked at. And it's why you finish up with something like this that needn't actually have got to this stage, by the sounds of it. And obviously we don't know everything, but here you have someone who's clearly not very well. And all this could actually perhaps have been sorted in a quieter, sensible way if the BBC weren't so inept.
So, Martin, you believe quite strongly that the talent, or the presenters, the newsreaders, the very highly paid staff at the BBC feel as though they're untouchable by the same rules that everyone else has to play by in the organisation?
Yeah, well, they are, aren't they? I mean, you've only got to look at Gary Lineker. Yes, we're going to make sure that Gary Lineker tones down his tweets. You go, well, he hasn't, and nobody's done anything. So the whole thing's a nonsense.
OK, look, regardless of what happens now going forward, I mean, again, I just want to emphasise there's a series of different things at play here for Huw Edwards, OK? So there was the initial element of alleged criminality, which now doesn't exist, OK? There was also the idea of whether or not there's an abuse of power, being aggressive and threatening to somebody else. There was the potential breach of lockdown rules, which we're as yet unsure as to whether or not that includes the criminality that's mentioned in the Met Police's statement, by the way. There's also these quotes-unquote creepy messages, etc. Look, Martin, is this it for Huw?
Well, I think clearly he is not well, and he is certainly not well. And so I certainly can't see him coming back into the fray anytime soon. And you have to remember that, I mean, although he clearly publicly said that, maybe he should get a bit more recognition than he is getting. He was the voice at the Queen's funeral. He was the voice of the coronation. And I can't see the BBC putting him back in that position. And for health reasons, maybe they shouldn't.
OK, no, look, we'll have to wait and see, obviously, how all of this pans out. Can I just raise as well one thing that I think, presumably, a lot of people will be thinking? It is Huw Edwards' wife, who has come out and released this statement. And for all of this hoo-ha about the way that the BBC have handled this, how long it must have taken the Met to release this statement, the Sun, Huw Edwards himself, and whilst clearly huge levels of sympathy for anybody who is suffering, by the sounds of it, the kind of episode that Huw Edwards is, and we don't wish anything like that upon anyone, you know, his behaviour from the allegations would insinuate that, you know, there's something slightly untoward, potentially, maybe there. I feel very, very sorry for his wife and kids.
Well, yes.
And I think that's important that they're not lost all in this, Martin.
They are, and you know, as a media advisor, one of the great things that has obviously changed for me over the years now is how social media has pervaded the whole landscape and effectively poisoned it, because what we used to regard as Fleet Street now will find that they have to go a lot further than they would normally have done, even during the reign of the Red Tops. They will have to go further, because if they don't, someone on social media will. And this is a problem that the whole of the media needs to face up to now, because you know, fair game, it seems to be the catchphrase for anything that happens now, and that's a shame, because the difference between what you and I remember as old Fleet Street and newspapers and media today is now miles apart, simply because of social media.
Thank you very much,
Thank you,
Martin. Martin Campbell, their former Ofcom Chief Media Advisor. It is terribly, terribly sad